Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s Chemtrails Task Force, now operating deep inside the belly of the beast, has uncovered what the media won't touch. The devastating storm was engineered, and the names behind it, all too familiar. Bill Gates, Peter Thiel, the Clinton Foundation, their funding, their tech, their fingerprints all over the crime scene. They say it's just bad weather, just coincidence. But the task force has compiled the evidence, satellite data, flight logs, whistleblower testimony, and it all points to one conclusion. This was weather warfare. The American people were specifically targeted. And now RFK Jr. says he has what he needs to finally do what he's promised for years: arrest Bill Gates. Weather warfare is the crown jewel of the military-industrial complex that can bring populations to their knees without those populations even knowing they're under assault. Bill Gates is on record admitting they've been working on perfecting the technology to assault North America with devastating winter storms. As RFK Jr. explains, Gates was working with the Pentagon before 9/11 to develop bioweapons that could be deployed through weather warfare.
There was a simulation called Dark Winter that didn't come out very well.
During June 22nd and 23rd, 2001, less than 3 months before the 9/11 attacks, the Pentagon launched a war game codenamed Operation Dark Winter at Andrews Air Force Base that emphasized the military's earnest commitment to bioweapons vaccines. Robert Cadillac was the lead organizer of this pandemic simulation. Dark Winter participants explored strategies for imposing coercive quarantines, censorship, mandatory masking, lockdowns, and forced vaccination, and expanded police powers as the only rational response to the pandemic.
Gates acknowledged that the Dark Winter simulation didn't come out well, but insiders at the Gates Foundation claim he's now celebrating the chaos of the 2026 winter storm that swept across the country, a weather event that was strikingly unnatural in its intensity and behaviour. Here's Gates, positively cock-a-hoop, as the storm barrels across the country, bringing record snowfall, ice accumulations, and sub-zero temperatures to over 140 million people. Weather warfare has evolved into a terrifyingly precise science, powered by decades of deep state research, and quietly funded by globalist elites like Bill Gates, Peter Thiel, and the Clinton Foundation. Their fingerprints are all over the skies, and all over the winter storm crime scene. The map of Winter Storm Fern, with record heat in the west and brutal cold in the east, is chemically nucleated weather warfare. The chance of nature creating the temperature gradient without artificial help? We're looking at a 1 in trillion chance.
You're telling me this map right here, so explain to me what I'm looking at and how this show proves that this is an engineered weather pattern that's happening right now, this huge snowstorm that's cutting across the United States and this cold snap. You're telling me that this map, so tell me what this map shows us.
If you went back 20 years, you would never, 20 years or further, you would never find anything that even remotely resembled that map. Weather moves in the northern hemisphere from west to east because of the Coriolis effect of the planet, because of the spin.
Right.
So how can it be record warm in the west and record cold in the east? That's patently wrong. So they high pressure dome with frequency transmission facilities, which are weapons of mass destruction like HARP in Alaska. They can superheat the ionosphere, creates a massive expanding bulge in the atmosphere up and down. That creates a high pressure dome in the northern hemisphere, which spins the upper level wind currents clockwise. So picture that red spot of above normal or record high temperatures as being a high pressure dome that rotates clockwise, rotating all the moisture from the Pacific around it, or low pressure zone below it, rotating below it. So they're spinning the moisture around the west, chemically nucleating it. And those are patented processes, by the way. These are endothermic reacting materials. Chinese government openly announced they're doing exactly this on a massive scale. All mainstream media covered it. If you bring it up here, they marginalize you. So they're seeding this cloud moisture with climate engineering aircraft, not the single engine propeller driven kind, but the kind that dump 100 tons in a single payload.
But the media wants you to believe it's just an unfortunate coincidence. That this is just climate change. That spraying the skies, seeding the clouds, and manipulating jet streams with nano dust particles has nothing to do with it. Weather modification investigators have pointed to deeply suspicious flight patterns by US Air Force KC-135 Stratotankers in the days leading up to the event. Flight tracking data and eyewitness reports suggest these aircraft, typically used for aerial refueling, were executing circling maneuvers over urban population centres most affected by the storm.
I don't think it's any coincidence that just before this historic ice storm is about to hit the United States Air Force has been flying some super strange flight patterns. This is not normal. This is not normal. This is not normal. These planes are the KC-135 Stratotanker, a military aircraft that's primarily used for aerial refueling. But it can also be used for geoengineering, also known as weather modification. The Stratotanker can do stratospheric aerial injection, which involves releasing reflective particles into the atmosphere to cool the planet. This is no coincidence that this is all happening just before this giant ice storm is about to hit the entire United States.
This is all the produce, the chemtrail produce of USAF Stratotankers flying in circles in patterns.
Flight Radar 24 data showed KC-135s performing loops over Montana and southeastern Connecticut on January the 23rd, just before the storm's onset. One ex-user in Connecticut reported multiple aircraft turning a mostly sunny sky ominous, saying that this was not normal, and they were prepping the atmosphere for the blizzard.
Yeah, safe to say something's going on here. I'm on a flight path, and this is not the normal route that these jets take over my house. And there's the sun over there being blocked out.
This isn't climate change, it's geoengineering. And they're ramping up operations as we speak to unleash more 1,000-year floods and devastating natural disasters. And according to RFK, the winter storm was the test run. And the master plan involves collapsing society in key parts of the United States to bring the entire country to its knees. We've got the details after this important word from our sponsor. They've been spraying our skies for years, flooding our air, water and soil with toxic chemicals. And now, more than ever, people are finally waking up to it. But what most people still don't realise is this goes far beyond chemtrails. They're triggering earthquakes across the globe with next-gen seismic tech. This isn't a conspiracy theory anymore, it's a conspiracy fact, and it's unfolding right before our eyes. They're also controlling hurricanes. Yes, Bill Gates literally holds the patent for that. US patent 200902894446 for those who do their own research.
When you hear the name Bill Gates, you probably think Microsoft founder. But now the billionaire may be known as the hurricane tamer. Gates is listed as one of 13 inventors on a patent filed for hurricane prevention methods. Hurricanes gain strength from condensation.
WeatherMod Inc., a cloud seeding firm bankrolled by Bill Gates, also stands at the centre of controversy over claims they're engineering devastating floods through covert geoengineering operations. Newly leaked whistleblower documents reveal the company's direct involvement in manipulating weather systems to unleash extreme targeted rainfall. Then there's Augustus DeRico, CEO of Rainmaker, a weather modification firm funded by Peter Thiel, and with direct ties to the Clinton Foundation. Here is DeRico explaining weather modification on camera with Sean Ryan, as the geoengineered winter storm timeline snaps perfectly into place.
A lot of what we do right now is snowpack enhancement. So you find the water with the radar, you fly your drone up into these conditions, hope that it survives. You disperse the material. So we have this aerosol dispersion system that basically just emits individual particles that the water freezes onto. With the same radar, you can now see it freezing, growing into bigger snowflakes, and then eventually bigger drops, and measure how much precipitates downwind.
So you're essentially introducing some type of an agent that has weight to it.
You're introducing an agent that the water freezes onto. It's just the weight of the water that pulls it down. So for every pound of this that you put up, you get in excess of 40 million pounds down on the ground.
Have you been in your own rain?
Snow, yeah.
That's not modelling, that's control. Now, pay attention to the timeline. DeRico said a mystery new agent, more effective than silver iodide, would be introduced in January 2026. And guess when the winter storm hit? January 2026, right on schedule.
Most cloud seeding operations in the past have used flares. So they'll burn a flare that aerosolizes the silver iodide. But in the flare, there's a bunch of other junk materials, right? People get concerned about aluminum or stuff like that in the flares. So we don't use that because we don't want any additional additives beyond what is explicitly and exclusively for rainmaking. So our aerosol dispersion system just uses silver iodide. Something that we're working on right now is totally organic material found in American soil that is biodegradable, that is more effective and actually costs less per gram than silver iodide. We have a bunch of lab testing to do before we roll that out to the field, and then we need to do all of the regulatory permissions with the EPA and otherwise. But silver iodide is what we've used for the last 7 months.
When do you think you'll introduce the other agent?
January 2026.
Don't forget that number. 1 in a trillion chance. As for Rainmaker and Augustus Dorico, they're just the fall guys. The public faces lined up to absorb the public distrust and take the fall. Lee Harvey Oswald 2.0. This entire narrative is a smokescreen to keep us from looking at the greater threat. Military-grade weather weapons being deployed in real time against real people. The deep state never does anything small. Their inside jobs are always dramatic, engineered to shock, overwhelm, and paralyze the public. Why? Because when people are emotionally shattered, when their world is turned upside down, the establishment can push through massive, irreversible changes without any resistance.
One of the things that I learned from whistleblowers from the cabal itself is that they have to work within something they call the rules. And this is very, very important. The rules are a body of spiritual principles that they must follow in order to be allowed to exist. Now, what do I mean by allowed to exist? I mean that they are aware that there are benevolent forces that will prevent them from achieving their goals unless we give them permission to enslave us. Ultimately, the universe is intelligent, alive, and conscious, and it is benevolent. It is a benevolent consciousness. That consciousness does not allow the negative to succeed unless it is invited. So the cabal has made a science, a very elaborate science, out of studying these arcane, occult, magical principles that allow them to get away with what they do. So they have to put out everything that tells you who they are in music videos, in these Super Bowl halftime shows, the Grammy Awards ceremonies. They're out there showing you the truth.
And according to declassified NASA documents, 2025 was the target. A year earmarked by the architects of control to unleash full-scale weather manipulation and destroy America from within. Now, in 2026, they are perfecting their weapons and correcting the mistakes of the past. For those still in denial, who think the deep state could never be this bold, this calculated, it's time to brush up on your history. These tactics aren't new. From JFK to the covert weather warfare of Operation Popeye, to the denials of the Nixon era, the playbook hasn't changed.
All right, guys, so let's talk about this winter storm. As far as I'm concerned, this is completely government made. And I will preface what I'm about to say based upon verifiable, declassified government documents that the intelligence agencies in this country have attempted to affect the weather before. And you can just look up Operation Popeye. Operation Popeye was a cloud seeding program during the Vietnam War that essentially aimed to extend monsoon seasons and disrupt enemy supply lines. And this program spanned from 1967 all the way to 1972. So like always, when I make these videos, I'm not asking you to be a rocket scientist when thinking about this. Just use your common sense. If over 50 years ago, the government was verifiably working to affect the weather for strategic benefit in a war across the world, just imagine what they're able to do now, 50 years later. So once you realize that, then the question comes in, well, why would the government want to bring a winter storm across the country? And I can think of a lot of different things, but I think ultimately the government just benefits from chaos and news coverage that distracts us from the real issues. Maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like I'm not the only person who thinks like this.
The only difference now is the scale and who the government is targeting.